Everybody, well, welcome to our very first of our annual disaster open house series. My name is Curtis Bartel. I am the disaster workforce engagement specialist for the Louisiana region, and I am really excited to be hosting these series again. This is something that we do every year, where throughout hurricane season, we'll have this weekly meeting. We will choose a topic each week. Usually it's something focused around hurricane season or disaster season in general. And then we'll have a brief presentation on that and then go over current updates with our disaster workforce and what's going on in our region. So today we are going to have Ed Bush. He is going to be introducing us to our hurricane season with his initial presentation today. However, before I do that, I do like to go over some of our current numbers firstly. So let me go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. And I just want to show exactly kind of where we are when it comes to deployments with this hurricane season. All right, everyone can see my screen?
We see your screen.
Sí, señor. All right. Okay, guys. So yeah, this is one of those slides I am going to be going over every week. This is just going to show exactly where we are when it comes to deployments and availability. Because you're going to hear me say this a lot, but we want to make sure that everybody has their disaster responder availability updated in their volunteer connection profile. If there's anything that you take away from this meeting, please, it's that. Make sure that you and anyone that you supervise or anyone else that you work with knows and is currently updating their disaster availability on volunteer connection. So as of right now, I went and checked just before this meeting, and we currently have 20 Red Crossers. That's including staff and volunteers. We have 20 Red Crossers in the state of Louisiana that are currently available to deploy and are not deployed at the moment. We definitely want to see that number get up because, like I said, that disaster responder availability, that's what National uses. That's literally the process for getting people deployed. So if you don't have your availability updated, you're not going to be contacted about deployment opportunities. So please make sure to go in after this meeting and update your disaster responder availability. I do have some other slides to go over how to do that, but I don't think we need to do that for this meeting. But if you guys do have any questions about updating your disaster responder availability, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can help you out with that. And then let's go over some other numbers. So like I said, we do have 20 Red Crossers that are not deployed, that are available to deploy right now. And then we also have 10 additional Red Crossers that are going to be able to deploy within the next 30 days. So they can't deploy today, but sometime within the next month, they are set to be able to deploy. So that brings us to a grand total of 30. And we really do want to get that number up. I remember last year, for availability, it was easily in the 30s to 40s, depending on the week. And so we want to see those numbers high again because it's disaster season and the availability is really what we use to get people deployed. So I know I sound like a broken record, but please make sure that gets updated. Also, I just want to go over here at the bottom really quickly. So it says volunteers deployed this hurricane season. I wanted to say, 69 because of Bertha, but that's kind of inflating our numbers. Bertha was great preparation, but it was kind of a nothing burger. So if we take out Bertha, then we've had 21 actual Red Crossers who have been deployed this hurricane season. And then, yeah, for the actual deployments, we have 0 deployments in Louisiana at the moment. However, we do have 4 Red Crossers deployed throughout the country. We have Cheryl Sanford and Cheryl Vaughn. They are still helping with the storms out in the Pacific and Guam. And then we have Joe Norton and Thomas Butler helping with the wildfires out west right now. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right, and now we can go over to our weekly presentation. So this week we are going to have Ed Bush hosting. Ed Bush is our RDO for the state of Louisiana. Hello, Ed, and he's going to be introducing us to hurricane season this year. So I won't take up any more of your time. Ed, it's all yours.
All right. Hello, everybody. Pleasure to speak with you for a few minutes. So for the next 4 hours, I'm going to take you on a walk through Louisiana's Unified. Just kidding. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen and clear my throat. Goodness gracious. Give me one second. I remembered to turn my mic off. All right, someone can someone confirm that you see my well, I guess I can do it this way too. Let's do that. Do you guys see my screen? Something that says our commitment to Louisiana. CW says thumbs up. Alan has his hand up. Alan, you have a question, or is that confirming? Oh, Alan changed his hand up to a thumbs up. Got it. I was confused for a second. All right, folks. So I like this topic as a first topic of the season to kind of put things in perspective. So a lot of folks don't realize that, our commitment to providing relief during a hurricane is twofold. Certainly, one, as a humanitarian organization committed to helping those people who need help and alleviating suffering wherever that suffering is, we want to do the best we can during a hurricane. But our commitment here in Louisiana is also much more formal. And that's kind of the part that I'm going to talk to you about a little bit. For those of you that are pretty familiar with the GovOps piece of all this, this may be very, very familiar to you. But it's a good walkthrough anyway, because to me, this also kind of double sets the need. We want to do the best we can and be the most prepared and the most ready because it's what we do as a Red Cross. But we're also on the hook for a pretty significant commitment to the state of Louisiana. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. So where do we start? Let's start here. Louisiana has a unified shelter plan. They are currently updating it and working on it right now. It is not in a finalized complete version yet because Louisiana has restructured. The Louisiana National Guard is now running the state EOC. That's different, and that needs to be reflected in the Unified Shelter Plan. DCFS, the Department of Child and Family Services, one of the state agencies that is a big part of disaster response for the state. So DCFS is now part of LDH, which is Louisiana Department of Health. That's new, and that means that all of the narrative and the part of the plan that specifically talked about DCFS is outdated and needs to be rewritten. The Red Cross has a very specific mention in Louisiana's Unified Shelter Plan. In fact, there's a page where all of the partners and all the players literally sign off on Louisiana's Unified Shelter Plan, saying they understand their role and they agree to work towards that goal. The Red Cross is one of the only non-governmental agencies to be a signed partner as part of that plan. That's a big deal. So they're working that plan right now. And when we get to the part where it's up in review and final stages, I'm quite confident that the Red Cross will be signing it again, because we don't have any indication that our role is changing at all. If anything, it's getting stronger. So the other thing that I want to make sure that we're all tracking is that Louisiana follows the emergency support function structure. Emergency support function, or ESF. That's how Louisiana lays out its plan and sort of determines who's going to do what for all the different components. Well, what does that mean? So this might help. So this is a listing of all of the emergency support functions, and these are standard across the board throughout the nation, throughout a lot of other agencies. FEMA follows these. Some other national agencies follow these same emergency support functions. So it's helpful. We're all kind of talking off the same page. Apples are apples and oranges are oranges. So you can see here, it might be a little bit small, but you can see the number and then kind of the corresponding agency or the activities that are associated with that number. So for example, ESF1 is transportation. So as part of ESF1, you might expect that DOTD would be part of it. The Louisiana State Police would be part of transportation because they have to do contraflow and they're doing all that. And there are other agencies that are part of it. The one with the big red circle around it, that's ESF6. That's mass care, emergency assistance, housing, and human services. Well, that's where we lie. The Red Cross's role is primarily focused on ESF6, providing mass care support for the state. So those are all the ESFs that go from the state. So now that we know what ESF means, this is one of the specific points that I wanted to talk about as far as our commitment to Louisiana. We, the American Red Cross, is a supporting partner with LDH, who I just said used to be DCFS, Department of Child and Family Services, but they're now LDH ESF 6. LDH has two components. The Louisiana Department of Health has an ESF 6 component. We'll go back to this. And they have an ESF 8 component, which is Public Health and Medical, which makes sense because they're the Louisiana Department of Health. We specifically only work with the ESF 6 branch of LDH, and that's where all of our old friends are. That's where Billy Migas and all of those all those folks that we remember from DCFS, they're all in ESF 6 under LDH. So the relationship that we have with them today is very similar to the relationship that we had with them in the past. And I see your hand, Alan. Let me get through these 2 points, and then I'm going to call on you, sir. So our support for LDH and ESF 6 is specifically regarding shelters and mass care support. And it kind of falls under these 3 bullets. Number 1, the Red Cross, we will assume control as needed of the shelters at parish level. Parish level, what does that mean? So for emergencies and disasters that don't reach the magnitude of a state declaration of emergency, the Red Cross has agreed to work with the parishes who are affected to help manage, support sheltering and mass care needs as needed. LDH isn't standing up for those. It's not, in the simplest of terms, it's not big enough for LDH to come on in and do what they start doing. So they're expecting that the Red Cross is going to be working with the parishes at parish level, helping to manage the situation. LDH asks us to share all of our information with them so that they can continue to provide that information up as part of the common operating picture that they provide to the governor. We'll get to that in a minute. So part 1, we're going to work with the parishes at local level for the smaller emergencies. Point number 2, for the bigger ones, the ones where the state is declaring a state of emergency and we're setting up general population shelters, primarily, most likely pre-storm and then post-storm as well. Perhaps the state is executing the point-to-point contracts that they have. The Red Cross, we have an expectation that we are again going to assume control and help manage those shelters as needed at a state shelter. So in the simplest of terms, when people are evacuating from the south and heading up north, and the north is opening up shelters for these people to go to, the expectation as part of the state shelter plan is that the Red Cross is going to take on a role of managing those shelters. To the initial commitment of 20 shelters is our commitment to the state of Louisiana that we will help to operate and manage, with the bulk of those being assumed to be pre-storm. And then part 3 of the expectations and our commitment is that we agree to, we're going to share information of all of this with our state partners. So before we move on, Alan comes from the GovOps world. Alan knows exactly what I'm talking about. He lives and breathes all this kind of stuff. Alan, what was your question, sir?
That was one of my questions about for the EOC. How that I know the tables are set for us to work with as on ESF 6, and they were coming across. We were shifting the information to ESF 8, but now we're going to be sitting right there next to each other. So that's why you answered the question after that. We're still going to be committed to shuffle them that information to keep them updated. You already answered.
Yep, absolutely. Great question, Alan. Okay. That's a great segue to this kind of other expectation. Oh, that's because I went here. So a reminder, there's all the ESFs. So let's talk about sharing information. So, and kind of what that looks like. So when we get, if someone from the Red Cross, if we click on ESF 6, it's going to take us to this page on what is called the governor's COP, C-O-P, Common Operating Picture. This is essentially an executive summary and a snapshot of the total shelters open, the open shelter capacity, the shelters on standby, severe weather centers. We must have one open somewhere today up north. CW, what's going on up here in Monroe? You all got weather up there, or is this just a weird little glitch in the system?
We're doing good right now.
Okay. And
It
this
is
this
saying that we're going to get some later, though.
okay. So maybe actually they've got something open in Monroe right now. Community feeding, no. So during a disaster, this would be populated with all the numbers showing all of the things that we're doing. And whether it's a full state response or a small local response, the expectation is the Red Cross, we will continue to populate this by letting our LDH partners know, and then they're updating this ESF6 executive summary. It shows up. So that's what the page actually looks like. Let's kind of talk about this some more. So this is what Alan was talking about. The other expectation of us, in addition to being prepared to manage shelters as the state needs, when the state, I don't know what I was about to say, when the state throws up the flag, when the state stands up and the state says, hey, we got something going on, we're activating. We want people, we need all of the primary agencies to have somebody report to GOSEP. So the Red Cross is part of that. We are expected and that we will report in person to GOSEP as directed. And the primary reason for that is because they want us there to help them maintain the common operating picture that they know they need to maintain for the governor. So all of that is part of the GovOps world. Jenny Skipper is the queen of our GovOps. Alan Ardwin comes from GovOps. Several of you, Elizabeth has been at GOSEP doing GovOps work in person. Some of you have reported to your local EOCs, reported to the state EOC. All of that is GovOps. And it's so that the state feels like they've got a good handle on the information that's being shared and the flow of it. So let me show you a couple screens. We're going to talk about Web EOC, the task manager, what I already talked about, the COP and the SITREP. So you go, this is the GOSEP's homepage. You go to your homepage and you find yourself here. Depending on the access that you have and the access that you've requested from GOSEP, those of us in the GovOps world that frequently have to visit these pages, we have access to some other stuff. So for example, those of us in GovOps, we have access to the ESF page. We click on it and we have access to this. We could feed data into this. We've already kind of seen this. This is the executive summary for ESF6 or mass care sheltering. There's some other specifics. So this is the shelter manager report. Just about every important piece of information that we keep track of in the Red Cross, GOSEP does the same thing for the state and for the governor. So just like Mustafa has to keep a running list of all the shelters that we're tracking in Red Cross world on Red Cross Web EOC as part of Mustafa's mass care shelter manager. Those of you who had to go out and do shelter surveys to update the records and verify that this shelter is still here and it meets these standards and blah, 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 blah. And that whole big running list of all the shelters that we could use if we needed it. Guess what? The state does the same thing. This is just a snapshot of the first part of the state's overall shelter manager. And you can see it's alphabetized and it starts out with the A's, Acadia Parish. So this thing goes on and on and on. It's hundreds and hundreds of shelters. And as shelters turn on and as buildings turn on and become shelters, they're tracking that at a state level. And guess what? We're tracking the same thing in the Red Cross world. So look at this. This is a snapshot of the SITREP publisher, all part of the page. For those of us that go to GOSEP or to report to the state EOC in person, we are required to update our SITREPs. A SITREP is a situational report, and they track all this. This is, you can see these are all final SITREPs because this was in response to Bertha. So Bertha was pretty short-lived, but we had to, all of the state agencies had to do initial SITREPs. to kind of say what were they initially doing. You can see they're organized. There's ESF 13. There's Lafourche Parish putting in their sit rep, ESF 8, ESF 12, 6. Oh, look. Oh, this one has a pencil on it. That means I could edit it. That's because I had the permissions to edit and create and update the sit reps because I was doing this during Bertha. And sure as heck, look, there's my name on the end. So it says this final sit rep report was submitted to the state on this day, on this time, and then we closed it on out. I remember this moment because it was so sad because we were having to close it all out for Bertha. And guess who else is doing the same thing? Again, the Red Cross is wanting, at the very minimum, nightly sit reps in the form of an executive summary from the job director that goes into every disaster response that we're ever a part of. The job director submits these, and Brad Kaiserman and his whole cast of characters up there read those things every day. So let me talk about one other expectation that we have. So in Blue Skies, there is a group that meets, and they're called the Shelter Task Force. It's parish-led, and it's specifically designed to manage the expectations and how are we going to do sheltering at a parish level. LDH, our friends in LDH ESF 6 call these meetings, and we always attend them. And all of the parish representatives, specifically the OEPs, get together and they argue and they haggle and they talk about what their plans are. What are you going to do if you have to open a shelter? Who's got who's got point-to-point contracts that still need to be worked out? How are you doing feeding? How are you doing support? If every single one of them says, well, I'm just going to call the Red Cross, they're going to do it for me. We've probably got a problem because we can't support 64 parishes with their shelter task force plans. But this is being run by GOSEP to try to make sure that the local parishes have a plan. Guess what? That's why we also want to send the DPXs to all of those parish OEPs as part of the supportive community discussions. Just like the parish wants all these folks to have, or just like the state wants all these parishes to have a plan, the Red Cross wants us to also have a plan with those same parishes. It's all connected. Common theme here for all this thing, and this is what I'm going to close with. To me, it's so obvious. What the state wants, what the governor wants from the Red Cross, as far as what information does the governor need to make decisions, and is exactly the same information that the national team wants. What the governor wants is the same stuff that Brad Kaiserman wants. He wants a common operating picture. There's some challenges to getting this. And we'll kind of go through these quickly. We've got the same systems, but they're different. The state's web EOC doesn't talk to our web EOC, which means it's different, and you got to literally have two screens, and you're pulling from one to the other to make sure they're saying the same things. Our expectations aren't always the same. What the parish wants to do sometimes isn't what the Red Cross wants to do. The parish might be in a hurry to close that shelter down and use that building for something else that they got coming up. And the Red Cross might be like, whoa, 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 we still got people here. Slow down. Different expectations, different timelines. There's different implications for a parish when they're opening up a shelter. When the parish says this is a shelter, they have to have a plan on what are they going to do, how are they going to feed, what are they going to do this. And sometimes the parish is like, man, we don't even want that. That's different than the implications for us, because we're just all about, hey, everyone is welcome in this shelter, right? Everyone's welcome. The parish is like, no, 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 that's not what we want. So there's different implications in sheltering based on what the parish is wanting to do and what we're wanting to do. And sometimes that gets in the way and can be a challenging. And then I guess the last point that I had was different end state goals. The goal at the end of it for the parish might not be the same as the goal for the Red Cross. The goal for the state might not be the same as the Red Cross. I tell you, sometimes it feels really, really different when the state's like, oh, this is the final sit rep and we're shutting it all down. And we're trying to figure out how we can open up and do more feeding in 4 new locations. And we're like, we're ramping up and they're closing down. How is that the same end state goal? And sometimes it's not. And that's just the way it is. So that was pretty quick. But any specific questions of me regarding any of the expectations that the state of Louisiana has on the American Red Cross? All right, I'm going to take that as an indication that I did an amazing job of teaching you all, or you were all catching up on your emails while I was talking to myself for 22 minutes. Curtis, back to you.
Thank you, Ed. Great presentation. So yeah, look, I guess it's what 2:28. So that is actually perfect timing. That should wrap us up for this week. I do want to let everyone know, next week I am super excited to announce that we're going to be having Jenny and CW presenting. And I'm trying to remember what they were actually gonna. Oh yeah, they're gonna do the hurricane, the LA hurricane response plan. So that's gonna be an amazing presentation next week. Until then, hold tight, everyone, and please. I know I've already said it 100 times, but I'm gonna say it 100 times more. Please update your disaster responder availability and volunteer connection, and pass the word on to everyone else. Make sure to update those available or those responder availabilities. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Happy
Bye.
Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend.